Shaka Ssali dead at 71. The voice of Africa's untold story.
Africa.
And for that, I would say, get better, not bitter, Africa. And please, please, let's keep the African hope alive. I remember the first interview that I received just before the first edition went on air. The journalist, asked me, what will it take for you to consider yourself a successful host of Straight Talk Africa? I remember immediately, spontaneously saying that if I could first and foremost remain authentically Shaka Ssali, the kid from Cavalry, I would have succeeded. And frankly, I think there is abundant evidence to suggest that we have succeeded.
A legend has left us today, Shaka Ssali, the voice that carried Africa to the world, gone at 71. You might not know his name yet, but by the end of this, you'll wonder how one man could rise from a tiny Ugandan village to shake the foundations of global journalism. Stick with me, because this isn't just a story of a broadcaster. It's a saga of grit, defiance, and a voice that refused to be silenced. So, who was Shaka Ssali? Imagine a kid from Kabale, Uganda, a speck of a town nestled in rolling hills, dreaming bigger than anyone around him could fathom. Born in the 1950s, he wasn't handed anything. No silver spoon, no fancy connections. Just a fire inside him that wouldn't quit. Today, March 27th, 2025, that fire flickered out in Virginia, USA, just 2 weeks before his 72nd birthday. Voice of America broke the news, and the world paused. For over 20 years, this man hosted Straight Talk Africa, a show that didn't just report news, it challenged leaders, sparked debates, and gave Africans a megaphone to the globe. But how did he get there? What drove him from dropping out of school to earning a PhD and becoming a titan of journalism? That's what we're unpacking today. Let's rewind to Kabale. Picture a young Shaka, or Mike, as they called him back then, running through the dusty streets, a kid with big eyes and bigger dreams. He started at Kikungiri Primary School, then moved to Kigizi High School. Smart, scrappy, athletic. He was the guy everyone knew could outrun you on the track or outsmart you in a debate. But here's where it gets wild. The 1960s hit, and Shaka's life took a sharp turn. He dropped out of secondary school, not because he couldn't hack it. Life just had other plans. Uganda was a pressure cooker back then, simmering under political chaos. Shaka didn't sit still. He enlisted in the Uganda Army as a paratrooper, a teenager, barely old enough to shave, jumping out of planes with a rifle on his back. That's not a movie script. That's Shaka Ssali at 16. Now picture this. It's the early 1970s, and Uganda's spiraling into a nightmare. Idi Amin seizes power in 71, and the country becomes a killing field. Shaka's in the army, a young lieutenant, watching the madness unfold. He told this story on Straight Talk Africa years later, how the discipline of the military drew him in, the sharp uniforms, the parades. But then it soured. Power turned rotten. Colleagues he trusted started abusing it, and in 1974, his name got tangled in a failed coup attempt against Amin. True or not, that was a death sentence. Shaka didn't wait for the firing squad. He bolted, fled to Kenya, then back to Uganda, dabbling in what he jokingly called international business. Smuggling ivory, to be exact. A hustler's life, dodging danger at every turn. By 1976, he'd had enough. Amin's regime was a meat grinder, and Shaka wasn't sticking around to be minced. He made it to the United States, a refugee with nothing but his wits and a junior leaving certificate. Most people would have stopped there, taken a low-key job, faded into the background. Not Shaka. He hit the reset button hard, enrolled in school, clawed his way up, bachelor's, master's, and then a PhD in cross-cultural communications from UCLA. That's not just impressive, it's insane. From a dropout paratrooper to a doctor of philosophy, all while carrying the weight of a homeland he couldn't return to. That's the kind of tenacity that doesn't just survive, it thrives. Fast forward to 1992. Shaka lands at Voice of America, a gig that's about to change everything. He starts co-hosting Africa World Tonight, cutting his teeth in the broadcast game. But in 2000, VOA hands him the keys to something bigger. Straight Talk Africa. This wasn't just a show, it was a revolution. Every Wednesday, Shaka sat down with presidents, prime ministers, rebels, and regular folks digging into the guts of Africa's toughest issues. Democracy, corruption, development, you name it. His voice? Deep, steady, commanding. His signature line, "I'm profoundly honored and exceedingly humbled," wasn't just a catchphrase, it was Shaka laying his soul bare, every single time. Here's where it gets real. Shaka didn't play it safe. He grilled African leaders, Museveni of Uganda, Kagame of Rwanda, Kabila of the DRC, guys who don't like tough questions. He'd ask about press freedom while they squirmed, or press them on governance when they'd rather dodge. But he didn't stop there. He'd flip the mic to the people, farmers in Tanzania, students in Nigeria, letting their voices cut through the noise. That's what made Straight Talk different. It wasn't some polished pundit fest, it was raw, messy, real. Shaka once said he got into journalism to hold power accountable, inspired by the abuses he saw in the army. And man, did he deliver. But let's talk about the stakes. Hosting a show like that? It's not a cakewalk. Africa's political landscape is a minefield. Dictators, coups, censorship. Shaka was a Ugandan-born American, sure, but his roots kept him tethered to a continent where speaking out can get you disappeared. Back in 2016, he moderated Uganda's presidential debate. Millions watching, Museveni on the hot seat. Shaka didn't flinch. He asked the hard stuff, kept it fair, and walked away with respect from all sides. That's not luck, that's guts. And it's why leaders like Bobi Wine, Uganda's opposition firebrand, called him a giant when news of his death broke today. Now, here's the problem Shaka faced, and it's a big one. Africa's story is too often told by outsiders, twisted into stereotypes, or ignored altogether. You've got Western media zooming in on famine or war, skipping the nuance, the resilience, the hope. Shaka saw that gap and said, "Nah, we're doing this ourselves." Straight Talk Africa wasn't just a platform, it was a counterpunch. He brought African voices to the forefront, unfiltered, on a global stage. But that came with pushback. Governments didn't love being called out. Some viewers wanted fluff, not hard truths. And Shaka? He had to balance being a journalist with being a target. Because when you shine a light on power, power doesn't always smile back. So how did he do it? Let's break it down. First, the man was relentless, dropping out Fleeing a dictator, rebuilding in a new country, that's not a straight line. It's a roller coaster. He turned every setback into fuel. Second, he was smart as hell. That UCLA PhD wasn't just a trophy. It was a toolbox. He understood cultures, communication, how to bridge divides. Third, he had heart. Listen to any episode of Straight Talk, and you'll hear it. The warmth, the empathy. He'd chat with a market vendor in Dar es Salaam like they were old pals, then pivot to roasting a president without missing a beat. That's a rare combo. Take this story from 2010. Shaka's on the phone with a friend in a Tanzanian market. Avocados everywhere. Chaos in the air. The vendor overhears, realizes it's the Shaka Ssali from VOA, and loses it. Begs to say hi. Shaka obliges, chats in Kiswahili, and the guy's beaming. Hands over free avocados like it's a medal. That's not just fame. That's impact. Or how about Nigeria? Same vibe. Shaka's face pops up on a hotel TV, and suddenly the clerk's negotiating a discount. His voice didn't just inform. It moved people, crossed borders, built bridges. Awards piled up too. VOA's Best Journalist Award, a UN peacekeeping nod, even his old school Kigezi College Butabere gave him their first ever highest achievement prize. Then, last September, the Ugandan North American Association hit him with a Lifetime Achievement Award. He stood there, frail but fierce, dedicating it to Kabale, his roots. "Let's keep the African hope alive," he said, voice cracking but steady. That wasn't just a slogan. It was his mission, and millions heard it loud and clear. But 2024 wasn't kind. His health started slipping. Social media buzzed with rumors, fake death reports. He had to debunk himself. "I'm alive and kicking," he shot back in April, classic Shaka style. He'd faced worse. Amin's goons, exile, starting over. This was just another fight. Except this time, he couldn't win. Today, in Virginia, surrounded by family, he slipped away. VOA's statement was simple, but heavy. A revered journalist and broadcaster passed away at 71, leaving an indelible legacy. 2 weeks shy of 72. Damn. Here's the kicker, the moment that hits hardest. Shaka wasn't just a voice, he was a mirror. He showed Africa what it could be. Flawed, fierce, full of potential. When he interviewed Bobi Wine in 2018, fresh off torture by Uganda's military, it wasn't just a headline. It was Shaka handing a mic to a generation screaming for change. When he sat with Museveni or Kagame, it was a paratrooper turned PhD staring down power, unflinching. That's the climax of his story. Not his death, but his life. A kid from Kabale who turned a dropout's detour into a global roar. So where does that leave us? Shaka Ssali's gone, but his echoes still bouncing. African journalism's better because of him. Grittier, bolder, truer. He mentored young reporters, inspired kids in Kabale to dream big, showed the world Africa's pulse. Tributes are flooding in. Bobi Wine's "Rest in Eternal Peace," friends calling him a bridge and vision. Me, I'd say he was a torch. Lit up the dark corners, passed it on, kept running till the end. Think about this. A man who fled death at 22 spent 49 more years giving life to others' stories. That's not just a career. That's a legacy carved in stone. So next time you hear someone dismiss Africa as a headline, remember Shaka. He proved it's a heartbeat, loud and unignorable. And if that doesn't make you sit up, nothing will. If this shook you up, wait till you hear what's brewing in Africa's next chapter. Hit that next video, because the story doesn't stop here.
I have to say that there have been very many uh, events that have happened during my stay at the Voice of America for the last 29 years. But I think that I would sum it briefly as a very, very challenging journey that also was somewhat interesting and incredibly rewarding.
You had loyal guests, Shaka, on your show that meant so much to you. They sacrificed their time to join you, rain, snow, or the summer heat. Why do you think they stuck with you to the very end?
I was not a very traditional type of guy, and so I sometimes used what I would characterize as a sort of guerrilla tactics in order to get unfettered access to some very, very inaccessible guests, for example. And here, the first person that comes to mind is a former Kenyan president, President Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi. You cannot believe this, Esther, but it took me 7 years before I could finally link up with President Moi. It took me 1999 when I also happened to be in a situation where I interviewed another equally very difficult president to access. That was the Democratic Republic of the Congo President Laurent Desire Kabila in 1999. And of course, the second time is when you and I were with the Voice of America director, Sunday Anga. 2001, President Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi grants us an exclusive interview. The other one definitely has to be Zambia's founding president, Dr. David Kenneth Kaunda. That is another incredible highlight.
Are you working on a biography to reflect on your journey? And if so, what should we look forward to?
I learned a long time ago to know that, yes, you could talk about how the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. But to be honest with you, in reality, it is a detour. And I think those are some of the things that you learn in my memoirs.
You have a famous line, retired but not tired. And your and your fans and viewers alike want to hear what exactly you will be doing during your retirement.
I have decided to dedicate the rest of my life to getting an opportunity to motivate and inspire the African youth to be the best that they could be at whatever they choose.
What's your advice to colleagues at VOA and those joining the Voice of America now?
I think that the Voice of America is an incredible organization. As you can see, of course, I was once an obscure kid from Cavalry. The Voice of America has transformed me.
Will you be returning to Africa, or will you be spending time between the United States and the continent?
I have often told people that whereas I may in fact be physically present here in the United States, I have never left Africa. I would like to dedicate my life, the rest of my life, to being there, providing my shoulders to the African youth so that they could actually or can stand on my shoulders to see a little bit farther than I. What is needed sincerely for us and the younger generation is to reclaim the dignity of Africa. to reclaim the Africa that does not have borders or boundaries. And for that, I thank God the Almighty for having given me the wisdom.